Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pixel Show. I'm your host, Robert Evans, and in this episode, we are going to do the holiday card wrap-up for 2019. So this is something that I wanted to do last year, but we were just launching the show, so it was a little soon. So this year, as the cards started to come in, I was like, oh yeah, I want to do the holiday card show. Now, the idea was originally to show you what are my good cards, bad cards, that type of thing, with not the intention of hurting people's feelings, because these are my family and friends' cards that I'm going to show you. But really, then as I thought about it and evolved more, I was going to tell you like what are the tips that I think make a great holiday card. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to show you these cards as an example, and I'm going to teach you and talk about how to make your holiday cards stand out. I want to teach you how to make your holiday cards stand out. So let me just say this disclaimer. If you are one of my family or friends and you happen to watch this show and I don't talk very nicely about your Christmas card, I'm doing this so that people learn what makes a great holiday card. And it primarily revolves around photography, since we are a photography show. So what I want to teach you, of course, is how to make your cards merry and bright, and how to put your best face forward. So what are the elements that go into a Christmas card that will allow you to command the top of the stack? I want your card to be the one that sits on the top of the bowl, the basket, however people collect their holiday cards in the December time of year, and your card is the one that sits on top because everyone loves it. Okay, so the elements that make a great card, of course, is the images or the photography, the card itself, the composition and creativity that you use in your card, and then, of course, the message and the font or the text that goes in your card. So let me just say, first of all, before we jump into each one, the best thing you can rule, and this applies to a lot in life, is keep it simple. Keep it simple if you want your cards to jump out. So let's jump into the first and the most important thing, I think, for the holiday card are the photographs. If you want your holiday card to jump out, your image quality is number one. You want those images to be beautifully lit and bright. You want them to have a very simple background, so there's not things behind the subject that are distracting from what you want people to look at. Clothing, if you're going to do a professional portrait, which I suggest to everyone, and we're going to talk about that and have a photographer. And no matter what your budget is, you can find someone with a camera, whether you have $50 to spend on a portrait session or up to $500. A lot of times photographers, decent photographers, or I would say $200 to $500 for a family portrait session. But also remember, you're not just paying to have a Christmas card, you're actually paying to have a family portrait. So you can actually have pictures for your home, gifts for the holidays to give the grandparents or whoever you want. So think about that. It's not just paying a photographer to shoot a portrait for your Christmas card. Use it for both. And also how you crop the images and the size of the images on the card are very important. So I want to show you a great example. So let's start with, we'll just right off the bat, we'll let the cat out of the bag. But I think you got the idea. But this was my pick for the number one Christmas card that we received this year. Why? Because it's beautifully lit, complimentary, simple background, easy to read font. I even love, this is something to consider, we can talk about cards, but I even love the round corners as opposed to the square corners. That's just my preference. And then on the back, now I think they have a few more pictures than I think are necessary. I think 3 is a good, things in 3 work together. So they did that, but we have 6 images and they're symmetrical. So it's easy on the eye to look at. The one thing I think this is hard to avoid that I wish that we didn't have to advertise for the companies that do it, but obviously it's good for them. And we're going to talk about some of these companies before. So this is amazing, but let me show you some of the other cards that I liked. The top 3 or 4. This image, so here we go. Same thing, they fill the frame, beautiful font. nice complementary colors. They went with the white. And this particular couple are also getting married this year. So they put an engagement shoot on the back, said when their wedding was going to be. Really classy, really beautiful. Nice winter shoot. So if you live in an environment where there's winter, you can do that as well. We're going to talk about planning and when you should shoot your portrait, and that's all obviously personal preference. Here is another one that I liked. At first I kind of was not so sure on this because the picture wasn't centered, but that's okay. It's all about composition, and we can talk about that. And then it matches on the back. Nice, simple to read font. And then I'll show you just one more, this one. So I really like this. Beautifully creative. I love how the red and the black jump out. It really grabs your attention. Complementary font to go with it. But then the one thing, again, we'll talk about that the back, you kind of can't read the font a little bit, but they used a cute family photo, so that works. One photo, kept it simple. Now, the worst thing that I see when the cards that come in the basket, that as a photographer, of course, that's really disappointing, is when you get a picture and the lighting is just terrible and you almost can't even see the people's faces. So this is the #1 tip that I would give you, is make sure that your photographs are beautifully lit and everyone can see your face. Even if you take it with your phone, okay. As a photographer, I'm completely against that. Hire a photographer, get a nice family portrait. But if you're going to do it yourself, make sure it's beautifully lit. So again, here's some examples of, you see what I mean? Like, you can't really see their faces. The shadows aren't that great. Here's another one, probably took on vacation, kind of dark, right? Here's another one, dark. Right? So again, if you're going to compare, let me just go back really quick. And let's do a side-by-side comparison. So dark, light. Like, you see the difference, like how amazing that makes a difference. Now these people, you can tell, oops, wrong one. Looking at it backwards. These people definitely hired a photographer, and this is professional. So you see the difference as opposed to sometimes doing it yourself. So what else can I say about the photography? I think I've made that point clear. I think another thing is, here's one I just wanted to show you. Love this one. It's a little smaller of a card, but they're also small in the frame. So it makes it harder to see them and who they are. But I really liked the photo. So I would just like to have seen this a little bit bigger, maybe cropped in a little bit closer. So photography-wise, photography is very important for your holiday cards. And I think sometimes a lot of people scramble at the last minute, and that's why they don't have a photo session. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, like the things that you can do to make sure you have beautiful images by the end of the year for your holiday cards as we move on. Okay, so let's talk about the card itself. So one of the things, again, these are my preferences, my opinions. You have to realize that, but I think it matters to a lot of people. Tactile or touch is super important. So I really like a card that has a nice feeling in my hand. It's thick, right? It's thick. It's bendy, as opposed to one that's like, this has a beautiful photo on it, but it's a piece of photo paper. And yes, I'm a photographer, but I don't know, when I get a card, I want something that has some substance to it, right? So, again, there's different types. I mentioned it earlier. Here, I'll show you. This is another kind of ones that I liked. Nice card, feels the frame. The edges around it, I really like that. This card, which has the cut edges on it. Now, I know you can buy scissors that do this, so maybe they did this themselves. I don't know, because this might be an expensive thing to have it cut. But I kind of like that. But I think I prefer just the smooth edges. Again, just, now here's one with a square. And square is okay too, but if I'm looking at it, I think I like the rounded edges. So that's my preference. But again, I'm sure all that stuff costs a little bit more to round or keep square. But again, and size also is important. I think I showed you, we got this one this card here is a odd size. It's a vertical, which it's okay. But I guess I'm just traditional, and I just like, the typical. I think these are about 5x7 cards. So the next thing is composition. So as I mentioned, a simple layout, complementary colors to allow for things to work on your card. Groups of 3, I showed you in that one card. And then as well as crop images and fill the space. Let me show you an example of an image that's not doing that. So they not only do they not fill the space here, but it's also small. Like it's their family picture. I would love to be able to see their faces. Now, I also realize depending on the companies that you use, you might be limited to what you can do on the back. So if this was the only picture that they had, but they wanted to use this picture, then simply by cropping it and bringing them in closer would have allowed them to do that. Front side, super nice. Easy on the eyes, great. Pictures are cropped in, beautiful. But then the whole family on the back, kind of small. So that's one example of that. I did show you, I think on one of my favorite, you saw the groups of 3, so I illustrated that point. So composition, just to wrap this up, keep it simple. Make sure your images fill the frame. If you're gonna do multiple images, I think again, less is more. If you're gonna do multiple images, do them in 3s, and 3 is probably enough. So if you had one nice one on the front and 3 on the back, I ideally think that's perfect. And if you think about the groups of 3 and the cropping and filling the frame and all these compositional things, it's also the same rules that apply on social media. Those of you that have Instagram accounts, a nice bright picture that fills the frame that somebody can look at quickly and know exactly what it is going to get more attention and likes than something that's kind of far away. So keep that in mind. All right, so the message and the text. Again, keep it simple. I think your message should be short and sweet. Happy holidays, whatever you want to say, from the Jones family. Some of the things that I've seen on there, like they have the pictures of their kids and they put the kids' names and the ages. That's kind of cute sometimes, I think. Now, we are just talking about family holiday cards. Now, I realize if you don't have a family and you want to be artistic and creative, same thing. The rules are going to apply, especially if you're an artist and you're going to just have a picture of your art, your photography, whatever it is. I think then just one image, one beautiful image on the front is said best. But let's look at some text. So here's one. You can't put too much text on a card. So this card is a little different shape. This really is meant to be vertical. So way too much text going on here. I don't think most people are going to want to read that. And then as well as the thing that I don't agree with unless you're an artist is that it's in black and white. Holiday cards, people want to see color, bright. Speaking of too much text, oh yeah. How many of you get the letter with the pictures on it? Now it's done really nicely, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's in today's day and age, nobody has the patience to read anything more than a few sentences because of social media. So I have not personally read this. I'm sure my wife did. But I think the letter is not my favorite. So what else can we talk about? Just, again, clear font. This was a good example of simple, again, beautiful image on the front. And then they went with the 2 pictures on the back. They kept it simple. So I really like that. So again, keep that in mind. Obviously, see the theme here is simple. So let's move on to the next. And now I want to talk about planning ahead. So I think some of the reason that people aren't successful and they end up using the vacation photos or whatever is because they didn't plan ahead. So the best time of year, in my opinion, and then the most optimal and the ones that I'm busiest in are summer and fall. So summer is a great time to take the time to do a family portrait. And as you can see on the screen, I said, make a goal for yourself for August 31st. Why do I say August 31st? Because generally most kids go back to school after Labor Day, and some schools start, 2 weeks into August. So you have to consider, what time your kids go back to school and when you're going to have everyone together. That's another good point. If you know your kids are at college and you know that they're home for Thanksgiving, well, then that might be your optimal time to do that, or know when your family's and plan ahead. Hire a photographer, have them scheduled for that date, and make yourself that goal. Now, fall, if you like fall, that's a great time of year, and you want to do a fall portrait, then give yourself a deadline of October 15th to get that done. Usually by the second week of October, again, depending on where you live, if you have fall colors. The leaves are pretty enough, and you can get your fall portrait done, or at least there's leaves on the ground. So again, it's just giving yourself that goal or that deadline to get your portrait done. And then here's some other things that you can do leading up to that. So update your list. So that's one thing. Like, you get to the holiday season and you're like, oh, people have moved. Like, I know we moved this year, and we sent out a holiday card that said we moved, and our goal was to get it sent out by Thanksgiving, and we were a little later, because again, we are victims to the same thing, life and kids and all that. So update your list. Make it a goal just to go through your list in October and have that ready to go. And then in November, is when you want to get the cards ordered, and go through all that in your pictures, and then get your cards sent out by the end of November. If you make that goal for yourself, then you have all of December to just enjoy the cards coming in. You might be one of the first ones. And again, the goal is to keep your card on the top of the stack or in the front of the basket. That everyone's like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful photo, what a beautiful family, what a beautiful image. Again, even if it's not a family, like, just make sure your images are beautiful. And finally, let's go through and little couple etiquette tips. So when you're addressing your cards, you always want to use proper titles, Mr., Mrs., Doctor. And then the traditional etiquette calls for handwritten envelopes. So it's very nice if you handwrite the envelopes. I know it's a lot of work. But if you have a large group of mailing, then it's acceptable to put them on a printer with a pretty font and send them out that way. The other thing is when you're signing the card. Traditionally, when you're signing a card, from you and your spouse, the woman's name would appear first and then her husband's. However, when you're signing the holiday cards for the entire family, you want to put the father's names first, and then the mother's name, and then the children's names. Now, I mentioned earlier the children's age. Now, this is a place, now it's not on the envelope itself, but like on the card where I saw the kids' names, and then next to it a little parentheses of their age. It's just nice to remind people if they don't know, oh, look at, Robert's kids are 12, 13, 15 now. So I really kind of like that. That's a personal thing that I liked. And then finally, the other thing to keep in mind is that your card should have stamps on them. And of course, it's a great time of year to go to the post office and buy creative holiday stamps or any type of stamp that you want to express your own uniqueness. But they should be stamps and not run through a postage meter. Also, when you're packing the card into the envelope, you want to insert the back of the card and the envelope face up so that when the person opens it, the first thing they see is the images. And of course, buy the best quality cards that you can afford. So as I mentioned before, the quality of the card is important. Purchase the best card that you can afford. I realize budget is an issue. And if you're really going to go out, by the time you pay a photographer and get an amazing card, but you don't have to. Like I mentioned before, the three companies that are usually the ones that we get, Minted, Shutterfly, Tiny Prints, those three companies, I get the majority of cards. There was Snapfish that I saw. You don't have to spend a fortune to get a good quality holiday card. So hopefully all these tips and informations helped you, and you have a new renewed energy and a guideline to go make your holiday cards this year amazing, so that you get to be at the top of the pile, the front of the basket. So I'm Robert Evans. Thank you very much for watching The Pixel Show, and have a great day.